Hello, this is Will Schlecht from IronCrow AI, and today I'm going to be discussing the changes to the interface that have been made recently. We have combined the Sandbox, Interrogate, and Drafting tabs into a unified Sandbox tab. And if you have learned how to use the interrogation, drafting, or sandbox tabs before, don't worry, all of those skills still apply. The way that you decide what mode you're in, which is analogous to how the previous interface allowed you to select a tab to determine what type of output you wanted, you can now select all of that in this mode selection modal. So if you want to use the traditional interrogation feature, you can select that here. And now everything you do is going to be the same as if you were using the interrogation tab. Or if you're going to use the agent mode, which was available in the old interrogation tab, you can select the agent mode button here, and the output will be the agentic output from the agent mode. It'll do multi-step process over your documents to accomplish a high-level task. Uh, Same concept with the draft tab. The different output types from the draft tab are now available here. So if you want to draft a generic document like an email or an office action response, you can select this output type under the draft tab. Or if you're drafting a patent application, that's available here, and figures as well. And in the Word document version of our Word add-in, the edit mode is also available under draft. So everything that existed before, everything that you could do before with the sandbox, LLM Sandbox, is still available to you. It's just accessible via this mode selection instead of via different tabs. So we've now just got three tabs, which makes the interface a little bit cleaner, and it helps reduce some of the ambiguity about what tab you should be in, or if you have loaded a conversation and you have generated some output, but you maybe that you generated this output, this nice conversation thread in the interrogation tab, and you actually want that in the drafting tab because you're going to use some of that information to draft a patent application. You now don't have to worry about switching or saving the conversations and loading them in different tabs. It's all just one tab, which allows you the flexibility of doing some interesting things. So, for example, I've got basically disclosure materials here and desired style reference documents here. And what I can do is ask this agent mode, or ask the interrogation mode to kind of summarize the disclosure materials. So this is the way we would have used this tool if we were using the old interface in the interrogation tab. So please summarize the disclosed invention. So you can do these kinds of prompts to kind of pull out factual pieces of information or help you understand the invention or the provided disclosure documents. So you can do that, and then you can start drafting in applications. You can start drafting the substantive sections. So the example of how to use this new unified sandbox interface is going to be mostly patent drafting or drafting a patent application, but these approaches of mixing and matching different output types work with office action responses as well. So there we go. We've got basically a summary of this invention disclosure. That's great. Now let's shift over into drafting a patent application and ask this tool to, okay, thanks. Now please draft a first independent claim for this invention. So now it's just like we were in the drafting tab and selected our output type as the patent application. So we're going to output a claim in this case. So we can run that. The main advantage, though, of having combined these three tabs is that you're now able to better utilize your own custom prompts. And I'll show you that now. So we've got this first attempt at a independent method claim for this disclosed invention. Well, what we can do is use our custom prompts, which before were kind of isolated in their own tab, in the sandbox tab, and I don't think people use that tab very much. But now these prompts, these custom prompts, are able to access your context and style documents. So they're able to see all of the relevant context for the project that you're working on. So as an example of how this can be useful, we can make a claim variations prompt. And what this is going to do is actually, I'll show you what this looks like. So the claim variations basically says that you'll be provided with context documents, which are disclosure documents for a new US patent application, and that your task is to come up with a wide variety of claim ideas. And you can see that we've also set the temperature to 1, which increases the randomness, and reduce the top P, which also kind of increases the randomness of the response. So we're able to make very customized prompts to accomplish very specific tasks. So in this case, this is going to be essentially a randomizer, a way to generate a large range of different variations of this claim. So please generate several variations of 1 above. And I guess I could have actually included this type of text in the prompt itself. So you can include a template here. So you can just, you don't have to type, if you're doing some very specific task where the verbiage is always the same, like, please respond to this 102 rejection, or please check this section of patent application for patent profanities. You can just keep that text there, and that would load when you load your custom prompt. But in this case, we're just going to ask it to generate some variations of claim 1 and make sure we got the right mode and go from there. So essentially, you can now use the pre-existing features of the interrogation tab and the drafting tab, which were really good at pulling out factual information, not hallucinating, and generating work product in a certain format, respectively. So those two tabs, those were their tasks. But now you can essentially create any other type of agent or type of chatbot that you want using these custom prompts. So here we can see we've got 5 claim variations, and these are going to be not just variations kind of intentionally, but also variations because there's a bit of randomness in the output. So that's going to ensure that we actually can get a pretty genuinely distributed set of claims. So we can then look at these and see if there's any that look interesting to us. So that's just one super specific example of where custom prompts can be helpful. It's really, there is no limit. It's up to you and your creativity to kind of figure out what tasks you do often in your particular style of drafting or responding to office actions in your practice. And then you can encode those in these custom prompts, which can then be a part of the overall kind of pre-existing workflow. So the pre-existing stuff that you would have used the sandbox for, like drafting applications, responding to office actions, using the interrogation tab or the drafting tab, you can now add your own additional custom prompts into the mix pretty easily. So that's great. So another thing that you can do is just another example of a custom prompt. We've got an inventor questions prompt. So this prompt, inventor questions, this prompt basically asks this model to look at the disclosure documents, which it now has access to, and then generate questions to help flesh out or strengthen any of the more weakly disclosed sections of this invention disclosure. So that's what we have selected here. We have the disclosure documents. we can unselect the style documents, and this new interface allows you to more easily control your files this way. So you can remove each file individually, which is nice, or you can remove all of them. It'll ask you to confirm. So now we have removed all of our style files. We won't need those anymore for this example. And yeah, one additional subtle change is you can select the knowledge bases in addition to your own context documents. So before, this was mutually exclusive. You could either select your own documents or one of these knowledge bases, but now you can combine this selection. You can have the MPEP selected with an office action or with your application, and then generate output based off of all of that knowledge at once. So it's subtle. You might not notice it, but that's actually very powerful to be able to select multiple knowledge bases and your own documents at the same time. That's especially powerful when you're in the agent mode, because the agent mode is able to utilize any of the selected documents, but not the unselected documents, right? So if you give it access to everything, it can use its own discretion to determine which files or knowledge bases will help it accomplish its task. And before, you weren't able to use the MPEP with the agent mode and your own documents because selection of those two types of context documents were mutually exclusive. But now you can mix everything in, and the outputs are really impressive. With the agent mode, I've seen some really impressive results on one-shotting responses to 101 rejections by allowing the tool to have access to the subject matter eligibility examples and the MPEP, in addition to all of the documents specific to the office action that you're working on. But anyway, back to the example with generating questions for inventors. So this can be helpful when preparing for a invention disclosure call with the inventor to help get more information from the inventors, basically. So in this case, we're going to ask the tool to generate questions based on the provided disclosure documents to help bolster this invention disclosure. So I might be beating a dead horse, but the one big advantage of having this new unified tab is that your custom prompts, which previously were kind of underutilized, they can now integrate and work with your own documents, and they can also be a part of the same chat thread as the other tools like draft and interrogate, which make them much more powerful. There's a lot of cool combinations that you can do, like having a custom prompt which generates an outline for a figure based off of all of your disclosure materials and style documents, and then have the drafting tab go from there to kind of complete the detailed description of that figure based on the outline. So before, what you would have to do is go to the Sandbox tab, and it wouldn't really know what was going on with the disclosure documents because it didn't have access to those documents. You could give it the text from the figure, and it would make an outline based off of that text, but sometimes it wouldn't know what a reference number was because it didn't have the larger context of what that invention was, what the invention disclosure was talking about. All right. So the tool has come back with the questions that it's generated for the inventors, questions about the deep learning architecture, processing and training. In my experience, the questions that it's able to generate are very thorough. So that's a nice thing to have when going into an invention disclosure meeting. So just a couple of quick examples of the way that you can use this new unified sandbox interface. This also applies to the Word add-in. So if you use the Word add-in, it'll be a similar experience. There'll be less tabs to work with, and don't be afraid if you see that there's no interrogate or drafting tab. They're all just here, and you can select how you want to do things or which mode you want to use. Kind of, I guess you can think of it as the output that you want. You can select the kind of output based on this mode selection. So hopefully that opens up a lot of additional flexibility into this tool and makes your life as a patent practitioner a little bit easier. So thank you, and I'll talk to you again next time.